Welcome back to Papa's Workshop. Well, this is part 2 of my 2-part series on being able to make this Starbond Premium Super Glue sign. Now today, we're going to finish this up, put this top coat on it, and make it look absolutely beautiful. Stick around, I want to show you exactly how I made this type of sign, and you can easily get the same results in your shop. Are you ready to create results like this in your shop? Well, watch part 1 and this part 2 video. Now I'm sanding this with 220 grit paper, and you want to sand very lightly. Because this has the white epoxy on it and it's not just wood, you don't want to take the chance on sanding through the white epoxy. So you want to sand very lightly and just continue to watch what you're doing and how deep that you're going. And really avoid the edges when you sand this. And look at it often as to how you're progressing, and don't go any further than you absolutely have to. Now by looking at this, you can get an idea of how much you need to sand, because the white has been barely touched. You can see how this is dull in the center, and you can see the shiny edges. So we still need to go down deeper. Other areas, if you look at this area here, you can see how that line is lighter than the other color on the inside. And it's also shiny. So that again lets you know exactly where you need to sand. Now I'm taking my time and really looking at it, and you can see how these corners have all cleaned up and they look really sharp now, and I don't want to go any further. I'm also looking for how this is just getting a little bit dull, and that's good. Once the line is nice, sharp, and clear, I don't want to go any deeper. And I have a little bit here, and I'm very slowly and cautiously sanding this. And then I'll take just a little bit of the alcohol and wipe that off, and I can see the results and I can see what needs to be done. The good thing about the alcohol, it dries very quickly. And if I look at the detail on all the letters and the lines, it's really looking good, and I don't need to sand anymore. So then we continue down, we see this spot, we see the spot in between the M, and we see the spots here. And of course this S was overfilled. So this is the next area that I'll be working on. And again, very slow, and have to have a lot of patience with this and lightly sand it. So after about 20 minutes worth of sanding, this is now looking like a really beautiful sign. I want to do a real good cleaning and get all of the dust off of it. But it really is taking shape. The letters are crystal clear, sharp. The hardest part was this section here where it had been overfilled. And now you can see that this is gorgeous before the clear coat. And that's what you want to do. You want to have everything, all the imperfections taken care of before you put that clear epoxy on top of it. So the sanding is completely done now. And the cleanup is done. All of the residue has been removed from this sign, and it absolutely looks gorgeous. I don't really see any flaws at all at this point. And as far as these letters, the letters such as the G, which is completely filled, the S is completely filled, versus the U and the P that's not. That's okay, because when we put the clear on it, that will all fill. The Starbond letters up here, same way. You can see how they're bright and shiny. That's because they're slightly below the surface. The other project that I'm going to be pouring the clear resin over today is this chessboard. And I have another video that shows a few little imperfections that we had to be able to correct before this final coat of the clear goes onto it. I'll provide a link in the description below so that you can see how I repaired and fixed the different imperfections. Now that the sanding is all finished, I do the exact same thing that I did with the Starbond logo sign. Got to clean up everything. I want to clean this entire surface of the chessboard, plus I want to clean up the area also and make this workbench as close to dust-free as I possibly can. And before we pour this resin, we need to know how much to mix up. Now, I've often said you need to calculate exactly how much resin that you need. For the product that I'm using today, which is the Stone Coat Countertop epoxy resin, I'm going to be using 3 ounces per square foot to be able to do that. Now remember, I'm doing 2 projects. I'm doing the Star Bond sign, and I'm putting the final coat onto the chessboard as well. So let's calculate exactly how much resin that we need to be able to mix up so we don't waste any. So the 2 projects that we're working on today, one of them is 5.75 by the 20.75 inches. When you multiply that out, that is going to be 119.3 inches. The other project, the chessboard, is 20 by 20, and that's going to be 400 inches. Now when we add these 2 together, we're going to get the total square inches that we have for both of these projects. So it's 519. Remember, it takes 3 ounces now per square foot. Well, how many square inches are there in 1 square foot? 144. So all we need to do is divide our 519.3, and we're dividing that by the 144. That is 3.6 square feet. So we're going to need a total of 10.8 ounces to be able to do this project. And that way we're not going to have very much waste at all. And that's the key thing. Remember, the epoxy is rather expensive and you don't want to waste it. So we're going to mix up 11 ounces of the epoxy for pouring these 2 projects. Now for these projects today, I want to put the tape around the edges, and that way the epoxy will be able to flow into this area self-level, and after about 30 minutes, then I'll pull this tape off and let it go down the sides. Now this creates just a little bit of a trough, and that way, as this sets up, that epoxy will just continue to flow over, and it will begin to set up at that point. So this portion will remain constant. And I'm going to do the same exact thing to the chessboard. So I have a little bit of epoxy that will roll over the edges, but I want to have a good clear coat that's perfectly flat this time on the chessboard also. I have these 2 small cups, and it has the markings on the side for the ounces. The large cup that I'm going to pour all of this resin into is just an 18-ounce solo cup. Now this is tapered. It's not the most ideal cup, but it's what I've got, so I'm going to use that. So I'm going to have to really work at scraping the sides to be able to get all of that resin mixed up well. Now we need to pour part B into here. And let's make sure that we have equal amounts. Need a little bit more of the part B. So that's got all the epoxy out of that. Let's pour this one in. So that looks good. Those 2 cups are done. Now I want to stir this for a good 2 minutes. Okay, it has been 2 minutes of stirring, and my arm feels it. So now we are ready to be able to pour this epoxy out. Get it one more time real good. We got plenty of working time, no reason to be in a rush. Put that right there. Also want to go ahead and pour it on here. Make sure that we have enough product. I'll just set that right there. We'll spread this out. I can use my hands because this is small projects. Get this right up to the edges. That way we know we have enough epoxy on this. We'll do the same thing over here. I'll save a little bit in my cup in case I need it. And I'm just bringing that right up to the edge. I want to make sure that I have good coverage throughout. That surface tension can cause a problem, just like this. Right here, we need to break that surface tension and get it so that it flows. When you're doing multiple projects like this, you have to be able to split your epoxy resin appropriately. So you have to save some in the cup in case you just misjudge a little bit. It's important to be able to look over this very closely and make sure that you have all complete coverage, even all the way to the edges. Now the epoxy will self-level, but if there's gaps in there that's called the surface tension, it's not going to flow there. Let's go ahead and take the torch now and get rid of all the bubbles. The bubbles are actually caused from the stirring and mixing of the epoxy. So one of the things I want to discuss is, what do I mean by the surface tension? Well, oftentimes when you're pouring and spreading that resin out, the resin doesn't completely cover. There looks like a little bubble or a little hole that doesn't get covered with the resin. The same thing happens on the edge. When you have that resin rolling down the side, oftentimes it will leave gaps. Well, you need to break that surface tension so that it will flow. I want to get the camera down close so that you can see, with the light reflecting off of it, just how smooth it is. You see a little bit of the wavy action. That's okay. That is going to self-level and become completely smooth and flat. This looks perfect. It's beautiful. I love it. Why the blue tape? Well, the blue tape actually creates a form for this epoxy resin to be able to flow and self-level across the surface. You let this set up for about a half hour to 45 minutes, and then when you remove the tape, this resin flows much slower, and it does not disturb the bulk of the resin that's on the surface of the project. And that makes for an absolutely gorgeous look, and you don't have to be worried about all the resin flowing off onto the table. So this is a very important step to be able to do for that finished top coat, to make sure that you get a good, solid, beautiful, flat coat of the resin on the surface of your projects. The other thing that I really like to do is group common tasks. In this case, I wanted to be able to put the clear coat on to the project today. You might as well group the projects together and do 2 at a time, or more if you have the different projects. Because quite frankly, it takes just about as much time to put the resin on one as it does 2. And the fact is, I really like being able to mix up a larger quantity of the resin to be able to do multiple projects. Now, when you take off the tape, that resin will start to flow over to the sides, but you do have to rub and help break the surface tension to be able to get that resin to flow. Because remember, it's already starting to set up and it's not going to flow on its own. By taking your hand and just rubbing that resin over and helping to smooth it out, you can actually take a look at this and see just how gorgeous that the edge is, as well as the surface of this sign. That's the look that I wanted to be able to create, and I hope that you will agree that this looks absolutely fantastic. I hope you found this video useful today, and it's something that you can try in your shop to be able to get these type of results using the epoxy inlays and doing this type of sign. The Starbond products are absolutely amazing. I love the micro patterns that they have to offer. And if you like this video, please, by all means, give me a like and don't forget to subscribe. I hope to see you real soon in the next video.